Join me as I dive into the history books and challenge myself to uncover the details of the bloodiest battle ever fought. The Battle of the Somme, a name that evokes images of blood-soaked battlefields, mud-drenched trenches, and the sheer horrors of war. It's a battle that's etched in the annals of history as one of the deadliest and most brutal conflicts of all time. But what made the Somme so devastatingly destructive? What drove generals to send wave after wave of soldiers to their deaths? And what can we learn from the bloodiest battle ever fought? As we explore the events surrounding the Battle of the Somme, it becomes clear that this was more than just a conflict. It was a clash of ideologies, of military strategies, and of human endurance. On July 1st, 1916, the British Army launched a massive assault on German lines, hoping to break through the stalemate of trench warfare. But what they got was a massacre, a catastrophic failure that would leave an indelible mark on the world. The Somme was a turning point in World War I, a moment when the brutality and futility of war stared humanity in the face. It's a chapter in history that's both deeply disturbing and profoundly important. A reminder of the devastating consequences of war and the importance of learning from our mistakes. So, let's embark on this journey together and uncover the tragedy of the Somme. Soldiers who fought in the Battle of the Somme faced some of the most brutal conditions imaginable. The trenches were a breeding ground for disease. The mud was knee-deep, and the constant bombardment from artillery fire made it seem like the earth itself was at war. But it wasn't just the physical environment that took its toll. The soldiers also had to contend with strategic failures, inadequate supplies, and a lack of clear direction from their commanders. The generals in charge of the battle seemed to be fighting a war of attrition, where the objective was to bleed the enemy white, regardless of the cost. This approach led to wave after wave of soldiers being sent over the top, with little to no chance of survival. It was a war of inches, where every small gain was bought at an impossibly high price. The scale of the carnage was staggering, with bodies piling up in no man's land and the cries of the wounded echoing across the battlefield. It was a conflict that seemed to have no end, no respite, and no mercy. And yet, despite the chaos and the confusion, there were moments of heroism, of sacrifice, and of selflessness that would inspire generations to come. As we delve deeper into the Battle of the Somme, we begin to see the human cost of war. We see the faces behind the statistics, the men who fought and died in the trenches, and the families who waited anxiously for news from the front. We see the hopes and fears, the triumphs and tragedies that defined this conflict. The Somme was a battle that was fought on many fronts. It was a battle of wills, of ideologies, and of human endurance. It was a test of strength, of courage, and of compassion. And it's a battle that continues to resonate with us today. The events leading up to the Battle of the Somme were a complex web of politics, diplomacy, and military strategy. The Germans had occupied France, and the British were determined to push them back. But as the war dragged on, it became clear that a more decisive approach was needed. The British generals, led by Douglas Haig, devised a plan to break through the German lines with a massive artillery bombardment, followed by a wave of infantry attacks. The idea was to create a gap in the German lines and then pour troops through it, creating a decisive breakthrough. But the Germans were well prepared, and they had devised a plan of their own. The German army had dug in deep, creating a series of fortified trenches and strong points that would be almost impossible to breach. They had also developed a new tactic, the defense in depth, which allowed them to fall back to prepared positions and then counterattack when the British advanced. As the British troops advanced on July 1st, 1916, they were met with a hail of artillery fire, machine gun fire, and rifle fire. The slaughter was immense, with thousands of men cut down in the opening minutes of the battle. The Germans had anticipated the British attack, and they were ready. The personal stories of soldiers who fought in the Somme are a testament to the human spirit. There's the story of Private Billy McPhail, who single-handedly attacked a German machine gun nest and survived against all odds. There's the story of Sergeant Maurice Rowe, who led a charge across no man's land and was awarded the Victoria Cross for his bravery. These stories, and countless others like them, remind us that the Battle of the Somme was more than just a conflict. It was a human experience. It was a moment when men were tested to their limits, and when the very fabric of society was stretched to the breaking point. The first day of battle resulted in over 57,000 British casualties, a staggering figure that's hard to comprehend. The magnitude of the disaster was immense, and it sent shockwaves through the British government, the military high command, and the general public. The tragedy of the Somme was not just the number of dead and wounded, it was the sense of betrayal, of confusion, and of despair that followed. It was a moment when the British public realized that the war was not going to be the quick, glorious victory that they had been promised. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Somme was a turning point in the war. It was a moment when the British military began to question its tactics, its strategy, and its leadership. It was a moment when the nation began to doubt its ability to win the war. The impact of the Battle of the Somme was profound and far-reaching. It led to a rethink of military tactics, a greater emphasis on technology and innovation, and a renewed focus on the human cost of war. Today, the Somme is remembered as a symbol of the futility of war, a reminder of the devastating consequences of conflict. It's a place of pilgrimage, a place of remembrance, and a place of reflection. As we reflect on the tragedy of the Somme, let's remember the faces behind the statistics, the men who fought and died in the trenches, and the families who waited anxiously for news from the front. Let's remember the hopes and fears, the triumphs and tragedies that defined this conflict. What do you think about the Battle of the Somme? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to check out my other videos on World War I history.